Hello, Vikings fans. Shocking update. Nobody saw this coming. Rumors are spreading like wildfire and the NFL world is buzzing. Could the Minnesota Vikings be on the verge of a blockbuster trade? Reports are surfacing connecting the Vikings to none other than All-Pro cornerback Sauce Gardner from the New York Jets. The speculation has taken over social media, and fans are left wondering, is this just another offseason fantasy? Or is Minnesota seriously considering making a massive move to upgrade its defense? Buckle up, because we are diving into everything you need to know right now. It all started when a tweet from an unverified source claimed that the Vikings and Jets were in discussions about a trade involving Sauce Gardner. While no official confirmation has been made, the rumor quickly gained traction across the NFL community. Fans began connecting the dots, especially after noticing that the Jets have been making defensive changes following a disappointing season with New York, restructuring its roster and dealing with salary cap concerns. Some believe this could create the perfect scenario for Minnesota to make a bold move. The trade speculation intensified even further during the second day of NFL free agency, when Twitter exploded with debates about the possibility of the Vikings making a major splash. A tweet from an account claiming to have inside sources suggested that both teams were engaged in serious trade talks. However, NFL analyst Patrick Seatman quickly pointed out that the credibility of this source remained questionable. Despite this skepticism, the rumor refused to die down, instead gaining even more momentum as more fans and insiders started discussing what a trade for Gardner could look like, making things even more intriguing. Sauce Gardner himself indirectly fueled the rumors on social media. While discussing possible moves surrounding Aaron Rodgers, Gardner made an eyebrow-raising comment about the Vikings offense, saying if Aaron goes to the Vikings, he might be number one in all quarterback stats. This remark immediately caught the attention of fans, who started speculating whether the star cornerback had any interest in joining Minnesota. In another post, Gardner reacted with surprise to a tweet mentioning a potential trade involving Vikings wide receiver Jordan Addison. His response: "I thought it was a joke this whole time, but y'all were serious all along." Huh? Left fans wondering if the young defensive star was genuinely shocked by the speculation, or if he was hinting at something bigger behind the scenes. Beyond the social media frenzy, Gardner already has some notable ties to the Vikings organization. Following a Jets game in London, he publicly praised Minnesota head coach Kevin O'Connell, calling him one of the best offensive minds he has ever faced. This admiration, combined with his engagement with Vikings-related content online, has led some to believe that he might be open to the idea of playing for Minnesota. But does this mean a trade is actually in the works, or is this just another case of fans letting their imaginations run wild with so much buzz surrounding the rumor? The big question remains, what would a trade for Sauce Gardner actually look like? What assets would Minnesota have to give up to make this deal happen? And would the Jets even consider parting ways with one of the league's top cornerbacks? While no official confirmation has surfaced, discussions about a potential trade between the Vikings and Jets have ignited debates across the NFL community, with fans, analysts, and insiders speculating on what such a move would mean for both teams. On one side, Minnesota is in desperate need of a lockdown cornerback to solidify its defense, while on the other, the Jets might be facing financial pressure that could force them to make tough roster decisions. Given the Jets' recent defensive shakeups and questions surrounding their salary cap management, some believe that the idea of moving Sauce Gardner is not as unrealistic as it initially seemed. One of the biggest factors fueling the speculation is the state of the Vikings' secondary. Under defensive coordinator Brian Flores, Minnesota has been working to build a more aggressive and disciplined defensive unit, but the lack of a true elite cornerback has been a glaring weakness in a division featuring dangerous wide receivers such as Justin Fields, DJ Moore, and Amon-Ra St. Brown having a shutdown corner like Gardner would significantly boost the Vikings' ability to compete defensively, with Danielle Hunter generating pressure up front, and a player like Gardner locking down top receivers. Minnesota could transform into one of the most formidable defensive teams in the league aside from his on-field talent. Gardner brings youth and long-term potential to any franchise at only 24 years old. He has already established himself as one of the NFL's top defensive backs, earning All-Pro honors as a rookie in 2022, despite a slight dip in his performance during the 2024 season where he struggled with tackling and saw his PF grade decline. Many believe that a fresh start under Flores could reignite his dominance. If the Vikings could help Gardner return to his lockdown form, he would immediately become one of the most valuable pieces of their defense for years to come. Of course, a trade of this magnitude would not come without financial considerations. Although Gardner is still on his rookie contract with a cap hit of $1,064 million in 2025, any team acquiring him would likely need to prepare for a long-term extension to keep him in their plans. The Vikings front office would need to navigate their cap space, carefully ensuring they have the flexibility to pay Gardner while also retaining other key defensive players such as Byron Murphy and investing in additional roster improvements. One potential strategy for Minnesota could involve backloading contracts to create short-term cap relief while securing Gardner for the future. So, what exactly would it take for the Vikings to pull off a trade for Sauce Gardner? Some insiders have speculated that the most realistic deal would involve a package of draft picks, with the Jets demanding a first-round selection in return for their All-Pro corner. One proposed trade scenario suggests that the Vikings could offer their 2024 first-round pick, currently sitting at number 24 overall, along with a second-round pick in 2026, an additional later-round compensation. While this might seem like a steep price for a single player, acquiring an elite cornerback is never cheap. And if Minnesota views Gardner as a long-term cornerstone for their defense, this trade could be well worth the investment. Another potential trade proposal involves sending wide receiver Jordan Addison to New York as part of the deal with the Jets, in need of another playmaker to complement Garrett Wilson. Addison could be a valuable asset in return. In this scenario, the Vikings would likely include a second and fifth round pick along with Addison to secure Gardner. Although losing Addison would be a tough blow to Minnesota's receiving core, the front office might determine that finding a new wide receiver is easier than landing a true lockdown corner. Trading away Jordan Addison would be a difficult decision for the Vikings, especially considering his role in the offense as a dynamic vertical threat alongside Justin Jefferson. Addison has shown flashes of elite potential, and moving on from him after just 2 seasons would be a significant gamble. However, some believe that the long-term benefits of acquiring a shutdown corner like Sauce Gardner could outweigh the short-term loss of offensive firepower. The Vikings have a history of developing strong wide receiver talent, and if they were to trade Addison, they could look to the NFL draft or free agency to find a replacement at a lower cost. Another factor to consider is Addison's contract situation. Currently on a rookie deal with a cap hit of just $375 million in 2025, he provides tremendous value for the Vikings offense. However, his production and potential mean that he will eventually demand a lucrative contract extension, given that Minnesota is already paying Justin Jefferson a massive salary. Keeping both wide receivers on high-value deals might not be a realistic option for the team in the long run. This financial dilemma adds weight to the argument that trading Addison now, while he is still on an affordable contract, could be a strategic move that allows the Vikings to strengthen their defense without a major financial burden. From the Jets' perspective, a trade involving Addison would give them an immediate boost on offense. New York has struggled to find a reliable number 2 option alongside Garrett Wilson, and with questions surrounding their quarterback situation, adding a playmaker like Addison could help stabilize their passing attack while also providing long-term upside. Addison has already proven that he can be a productive weapon in the NFL, and for a team looking to build around homegrown young talent, he would be an enticing piece in any trade package. However, it remains to be seen whether the Jets would actually consider parting ways with Sauce Gardner. Despite the speculation, Gardner is one of the best young defensive backs in the league, and New York would likely demand a significant return to even entertain the idea of moving him. Given his age, performance, and contract status, the Jets could insist on receiving not only Addison, but also multiple high-value draft picks in return. Such a steep asking price could make it difficult for the Vikings to justify making the move, especially if they believe they can address their cornerback needs through the draft or free agency. Another major aspect of this potential trade is the impact it would have on the Vikings' defensive scheme. Head coach Kevin O'Connell and defensive coordinator Brian Flores have been working to reshape Minnesota's defensive identity. Bringing in an elite cornerback like Gardner would instantly transform the way the Vikings approach their matchups against high-powered offenses. With a true shutdown defender in the secondary, Flores could implement more aggressive blitz packages and trust Gardner to handle one-on-one coverage against the league's best wide receivers. This level of defensive flexibility is something the Vikings have lacked in recent years, and it could be the missing piece that elevates them into serious playoff contention. As the offseason progresses, the speculation surrounding this potential trade continues to build. While it is unclear whether Minnesota and New York have engaged in serious negotiations, one thing is certain: the possibility of Sauce Gardner wearing purple and gold has captivated Vikings fans, and the excitement surrounding the idea is only growing. One of the biggest debates surrounding this potential trade is whether the Vikings would be giving up too much to acquire Sauce Gardner. While there is no question that he is an elite talent, the cost of obtaining him could have long-term consequences for Minnesota's roster construction. If the Jets insist on receiving a first-round pick along with Jordan Addison and additional draft capital, the Vikings front office would need to carefully evaluate whether this move aligns with their overall team strategy. Some analysts argue that losing Addison would weaken an already thin receiving core, while others believe that landing a true shutdown cornerback is a rare opportunity that cannot be passed up. The idea of adding Gardner to the Vikings defense is particularly appealing, given the team's struggles in the secondary. Over the past few seasons, Minnesota has lacked a consistent top-tier cornerback since the prime years of Xavier Rhodes from 2015 to 2017, and the addition of a player like Gardner could finally give the defense the stability it needs under defensive coordinator Brian Flores. The Vikings have been emphasizing an aggressive defensive philosophy, but without a lockdown corner to anchor the secondary, the system has faced limitations. Gardner would immediately fill that void, allowing Flores to fully unleash his defensive schemes financially. The trade would also require careful planning. While Gardner is still playing on his rookie contract, he will soon be eligible for a lucrative extension. Any team acquiring him must be prepared to make him one of the highest paid cornerbacks in the NFL. Minnesota has already committed significant financial resources to Justin Jefferson and other key players. So adding another massive contract to the payroll would require some creative cap management. However, the front office has shown a willingness to make bold financial moves when the right opportunity presents itself, and securing a premier defensive talent like Gardner could justify the expense. From a strategic standpoint, acquiring Gardner could give the Vikings a major competitive advantage in the NFC North Division, with teams like the Detroit Lions and Chicago Bears improving their offenses. Having a top-tier cornerback to neutralize elite wide receivers could be a game changer. Minnesota has struggled to contain dynamic playmakers in the past, and adding a player of Gardner's caliber would provide an immediate solution to that problem. Pairing him with Byron Murphy Jr. would create one of the most formidable cornerback duos in the league. giving the Vikings the ability to match up against any passing attack. But is this trade actually realistic? Or is it just another off-season rumor that has spiraled out of control while the speculation has been fueled by social media interactions and cap space concerns? There is still no concrete evidence that the Jets are actively shopping Gardner. Some insiders believe that the rumor may have originated from fan speculation rather than legitimate trade discussions. At the same time, the NFL is a league where unexpected trades happen every year, and the possibility of a blockbuster move cannot be entirely ruled out until the offseason fully unfolds, as Vikings fans continue to debate the potential risks and rewards of this trade. One thing is certain, the idea of Sauce Gardner joining Minnesota has generated massive excitement across the fan base. Whether or not the front office decides to make a move, the fact that such a trade is even being discussed highlights the team's desire to take the next step toward becoming a legitimate Super Bowl contender. As the rumors continue to swirl around a potential blockbuster trade for Sauce Gardner, one of the most pressing questions is whether the Jets would actually consider moving on from their All-Pro cornerback, given how dominant Gardner has been since entering the NFL in 2022. It would take a significant offer for New York to even entertain the idea. Insiders believe that any trade would likely require a first-round pick as a starting point with additional assets included to sweeten the deal, while the Jets have financial constraints and are reworking their defensive roster. The idea of trading away a cornerstone player like Gardner is still a major decision that would shake up their team identity for the Vikings. This trade represents an opportunity to address one of their biggest weaknesses. The lack of a true lockdown cornerback has been a recurring issue for years, and bringing in a player of Gardner's caliber would provide an immediate upgrade to a defense that struggled in coverage last season. Under Brian Flores, Minnesota has shown flashes of defensive improvement, but they have lacked a dominant presence in the secondary who can consistently shut down top wide receivers. Adding Gardner would change that, allowing the Vikings to be more aggressive with their defensive schemes and giving them a playmaker who can take on the toughest assignments week after week. The challenge for the Vikings front office is deciding whether giving up valuable draft capital or a key offensive piece like Jordan Addison is worth the long-term benefits of acquiring Gardner. While draft picks are always important in building a successful team, the reality is that finding a cornerback of Gardner's level through the draft is not guaranteed. Even first-round picks do not always pan out, and for a team looking to compete right away, sacrificing a high pick for a proven elite talent could be a move that puts them over the top. The same argument applies to trading Addison. While he is a young, promising receiver, the Vikings could believe that their offense, led by Justin Jefferson, can remain explosive even without him, especially if they invest in other weapons through free agency or the draft. Another consideration is how this trade would impact the team's salary cap structure, with Justin Jefferson already commanding a massive contract and potential future deals needed for key players like J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings must be strategic about adding another high salary to their books. Gardner is currently on a rookie contract, but he will soon demand an extension that would likely make him the highest paid cornerback in the league. Minnesota would need to structure their contracts carefully to ensure that they can retain their core players while also affording Gardner in the long run. From a competitive standpoint, acquiring Gardner would instantly make the Vikings defense one of the most feared units in the NFL, with Danielle Hunter generating pressure up front and Gardner locking down the secondary. Minnesota would have the perfect balance of pass rush and coverage to compete with the best offenses in the league. In a division where the Lions and Bears have been making strides, having a player like Gardner could be the key to securing a playoff spot and making a deep postseason run. With all these factors in mind, the big question remains, will the Vikings front office take the risk and make a move for Sauce Gardner, or will this just remain another off-season rumor that fades away as the season approaches?